Welcome to the Alain Elkann interviews, an unprecedented window into the minds of some of the most well-known and respected figures of the last 25 years.
We are in the Robilant Voena Gallery in New York, and there is the opening of the exhibition of the Catalan artist Sergio Roger, which has a mythological title, Mnemosyne'sDelay. The work of Roger has been exhibited already by Voena and Robilant Voena Frieze Masters last October. And now he has this show here. Obviously, his work has been shown in many other places. And we are going to talk a little bit about Sergio. You are specialized in working in textile, right? Since you were very young. And when I ask you why and how come, why textile, you explain that it has to do with your family. So what is the point?
It is connected, is something I have learned now, taking perspective. I mean, I wasn't aware how connected to my family this is, because it really happened from a very sort of accidental way. Like just really young, I started to play around with fabrics, and I self-taught how to sew, to hand stitch, and so on. And after I started fine arts, and this was always like the language I felt comfortable with, and somehow it became my language, and I've been developing and improving the technique and the method. But it's like in the last time, I realized how really where this sort of passion or this sort of connection comes, which I think there's like an invisible memory attached to it, that I realized talking to my family that, I mean, I was aware that there's a long tradition. Like my father was the last generation of a factory. They were like producing textiles in Catalonia. They had factories in the region in the north of Barcelona. But it was my father, like when he was very young, they closed this factory. And for me, I never explained this because it's not something that I experienced myself. Like I was raised in the fact. It's something I really didn't experience because I was very young when this happened. And when people ask me in interviews where this comes from, I didn't explain it because for me, it sounded like the perfect storytelling of I was raised from a textile family.
But you have,
you have
like an imaginary nostalgia.
No, I think it's something has to do with like a subconscious sort of memory that it's there and you're not aware of. It's not like I have a nostalgia of having a wealthy family, but not at all. It's not that.
Nostalgia of the craft of textile.
It comes from somewhere I'm like very, very original. Like it's something I'm not aware of, because actually what made me very aware and very clear about what I'm saying is that some months ago I was talking with my aunt, and she told me that Roger, like my surname, comes originally from the 15th century from the Netherlands. And they moved to this region of Catalonia, of Spain, the north of Barcelona. And they were themselves like wool manufacturers. And they brought all this technique to this region. And that's where my family with the factory comes. So it's been like a really, really, really long tradition with this, using this material.
But which materials you use?
Different materials. So what I use is usually it's linen. Lately, I've been starting to work with silk, raw silk, like dupioni, silk and stuff like that. So the reason why I use linen, and the linen that I use is not a regular linen, it's linen that I collect and I buy from antique shops, especially from the south of France. I have different sources and suppliers and so on. So I myself collect these pieces of fabric that they themselves have like a patina. They have like, I really think they tell a story on this by themselves. I'm really passionate. I'm really obsessed with this kind of fabrics. And since the main subject I work around is archaeology and Greco-Roman art, and they already have this visual texture effect that really simulates stone.
You have studied in Spain and in Germany. You spent some time in Berlin.
Right.
Now you live again in Barcelona, where you have your study. Let's talk about this very exhibition that you have in New York called Mnemosyne'sDelay, right?
Yeah.
Which, after all, it is apparently an exhibition of sculptures, heads of antique gods, of philosophers, of goddesses. Sometimes they don't have eyes. They have just the shape of the face or the hair.
Mm.
And for a visitor who doesn't know, they look like stone sculptures, right? Instead, they're not at all stone sculptures, right? Can you describe a bit of it? And how and why did you decide to do this exhibition? It looks very much like the exhibition of Greek and Roman art in Vienna, for instance. The installation reminds the Kunsthistorische Museum in Vienna.
That's right, exactly. This exhibition reflects like extension of my own artistical practice. So this is pretty much like the themes I'm interested about, and it's usually how I sort of revisit this subject and this theme. So this is specifically for this exhibition. So I continue like working with creating textile soft sculpture, inspiring actual archaeological artifacts, specifically Greco-Roman pieces.
So sometimes sculpture, sometimes columns,
exactly,
or
capital, architecture and sculpture mainly.
And how do you make them? Because instead of being hard, they are soft.
Exactly. So the thing is, as I said, I have a long tradition working with soft sculpture and sewing and so on. So this is like in this stage of my career, of my life for the last years, I sort of reached like a level of precision with this technique where it really became also from almost like a technical challenge to see how far could I come creating this detail of features with a technique which has limitations.
When you work by yourself or you have...
Well, at this point, I have several assistants due to the amount of shows and the commissions and so on. And also because I'm not trained either as a fashion designer. So I personally, some parts of the process, I actually need people who help me, which are like technically like really talented doing that.
Why fashion designers?
No, fashion designers, I mean more like people who sew and people who are like costureras. But they come usually like this craft or this art is related to fashion.
And you fill these sculptures with what? To become sculptures?
It really depends on the type of sculpture or piece. It depends on the size. It depends on the final effect. So I use either wooden structures. I use padding, like regular padding that you would use to stuff pillows or stuff like that. And I use like a high performance padding, which makes the work last forever because it has like silicone and it's like it lasts forever. It's not like it's going to crumble or anything like that. I use this fabric. And what I do most of the time is also that even after that, I collect these fabrics from France and so on. I natural dye them. So there's like a process of dyeing in order to create these irregular, like sort of stains and so on that even give a more idea. They highlight this idea of the passage of time, of replica and so on. So it's like in terms of craftsmanship and work and precision, it's very time demanding.
That's why your work has mainly an aesthetic purpose. You have on the back of that a different idea. Or is this your way of interpreting the world?
I mean, for me, it is very important to sort of balance like those parts. I mean, it's definitely visually very appealing. It's also like, for me, it's very sort of like something that I naturally do. And I think it's important and it's sort of somehow like very accessible. I think it's like a very accessible kind of art that people sort of usually can navigate my work from different levels because you can only stay on the surface. But for me, there is also a conceptual part, which is also very, very important for me. And for me, my artist practice enables me to somehow research and learn. I mean, I'm parallelly like taking a lot of history courses, philosophy courses, mythological courses, and so on. But for me, what is very important is somehow from different levels, but basically what like summarizing very much what I do with my work is really challenge perception of the viewer. So for me, there's this like trampantojo that first, usually I work also with these very conventional setups where you see it from afar and then you think, oh, okay, this is like art history gallery, like archaeological gallery or something like that. No, I was showing Christie's in the auction together with in 2021 in London, together with the actual works which were actually in the auction, and they were Roman and Greek pieces like from the first and before century and so on. And there was like this conversation, we created this setup where you didn't know, and it was like a dramatic lighting.
So what do you do? You copy antique things? You take photographs? What do you do?
I get inspiration mainly from museums, books, history, and also from traveling because I travel a lot and I spend a lot of time in Italy, Greece, even the influence of Greco-Roman art is like the basis, the grounding of all like Western culture. So it's everywhere.
This particular exhibition has been inspired after a trip of yours in Crete.
Right.
No? So what happened? What is the meaning of this exhibition?
Starting from the title, it's Mnemosyne'sDelay. It sort of condenses a bit like two main ideas. On the one hand, Mnemosyne is the goddess of memory. So it would be represented by this big faceless head that we have here. And so the thing is, last summer, I went to Crete for the first time in summer. On the way back to Barcelona, I had a connecting flight in Vienna. We got a delay, and then we had to spend a night in Vienna, which I was so happy about because it's my favorite city. Because like an endless best exhibitions, museums, blah, blah. So I ended up in Vienna one night. So I had one day in Vienna, and I had the chance to visit one of my favorite museums, which is the Kunsthistorisches Museum. And then I went into this room where there was like in the Greek Roman department, there was like a room with these beautiful pillars with all these characters, like a very stage, like dramatic setup. It was beautiful. It was like sublime, really, really cool. For me, what was very interesting is that in 1 hour, I sort of jumped in space and time because I came from Crete in Greece, which is like the original, like where the island, where all the myths were born, like original sort of like mythological archive kind of source of all like the imaginary. And then in 1 hour, I was in an archetypical 19th century European museum, no? And it was very interesting for me to see and to somehow try to not question, but put on the table to understand how do we create meaning, how do we relate to archaeological objects. Because for me, archaeological objects or texts or anything that has like over 2,000 years old, there is like an interpretation. I mean, and this art or science of interpretation is what we call archaeology that was born in the 19th century.
So you are an archaeologist, artist.
Sometimes I say I am a, what's the joke that I say when they ask me what I am? I am a tailor/archaeologist, something like that.
But you are only using material, right? You're not trying to use some other stone or plastic or whatever.
I might. I mean, I love combining using metal, for instance, like steel and stuff like that. Because something I am really interested in when I go to museums is that I really focus and I really observe the architecture, like the elements that they use in order to showcase the works. For instance, like bas reliefs, like they have these hooks, the metal hooks that they are in contrast with the stone. And I really observe and play with these kind of elements and try to introduce them in my work. I'm open to anything. I'm constantly experimenting.
But you don't belong to a movement or you are an individual artist, right?
No. And actually, I don't belong to a movement. And I think that also my art is a bit difficult to classify. I think people somehow don't really know how to place it in a way because it's very transversal. So since the craft plays a big role in some sectors of the art world, it can be a bit sometimes questioned. That's why I think like there's different fields like that play a role in my work, like craft is very important, like history is very important. And for me, the fact of showcasing even the design world, I've done some collaboration also with design galleries and so on. But for me, at the end, what I see, how I understand art, and why I think this is like the best setup to show my art is because I think art is like somehow the laboratory where sort of things are sort of like taken out of the world and sort of seen. And
you were talking before about tailoring, right?
Yes.
And last year or sometime short ago, the French company Hermès,
right,
with a company of leather fashion and all that, who tries to give the vitrines to artists to interpret Hermès or whatever. They gave you 2 windows, 2 vitrines in their shop in Barcelona.
That's right.
And what did you do? You built this huge...
Yeah, that was actually a really beautiful collaboration. I don't tend to do this kind of collaboration. Usually for me, Hermès is like a brand. It has a long tradition of supporting art. And they also like support like craftsmanship. So in a way, it's somehow like a brand that I really think that I can relate to in this idea. I think it's the right idea of luxury in a way. So it was like a really fantastic experience for me. So the thing is that they gave me this new store in Barcelona has like 2 twin windows, which are very narrow and very towering, like very tall, very difficult to navigate because it's really difficult. It's not like big window where you can create it. So when I saw the height, I was like, okay, let's go up. So it was the right moment for me to...
What did you create?
I created 2 goddesses, heads.
Without head?
Yeah, without a head.
Like La Samotracia.
Exactly.
In Paris.
That kind of figure. So it was 2. So I made in fabric, and then they were like open, and then in the inside they were elevating the dress, and you could see like, the inside was covered in Hermes leather, in a bright, beautiful Hermes leather, and there was an archaeological excavation with the elements of earth, salt inside.
You did it in your laboratory, in your studio?
My studio, right.
In
Barcelona, yes.
And what kind of city is Barcelona for an artist? Why you went to Berlin and you went back to Barcelona?
I mean, I'm originally from Barcelona. Berlin, I moved there from 2005 to 2010. So I studied most of my career in my art studies in Berlin. I think it was the right place to be, especially at that time. It was a very vibrant city, and it was like really, really exciting place to be. So I was taught also by contemporary artists, which are like professional, they're working at big names and so on. It was like a really, really great time. And that was actually, that time was before, I would say, in terms of visibility through media, like social media and so on. It was like, I think now we're in another moment. So as New York or any other city, you have to be in the center of art in order to be seen, in order to exchange. And I think this has shifted, it has changed. You can be anywhere in the world and you can just actually travel and show your work through social media or through internet or through galleries or whatever. No, but I don't think you need to be any more like
somewhere.
No, and for me, I really I live in the countryside, we have Barcelona, my studio. Well, I have 2 studios, but I mean, like the main studio is also in a little village very close to it's half an hour, which is for Barcelona, it's like a lot of time, which is in a big city, is nothing.
Do you consider yourself a Spanish artist or a Catalan?
That's a big question. To be honest, I went to a British school, as you can tell from my perfect British accent. No, I'm kidding, obviously. No. I studied in international school. I studied in Stockholm also for a year. It's a big subject. Daring to say this, I'm going to get a lot of enemies and so on. But for me, I respect people who have this feeling for nationality, of patriotism. But I never had this. I think it would be great. I mean, I don't have that kind of irrational passion. I don't like soccer.
You're Spanish.
I don't like soccer. I don't get this.
What happened in Barcelona was very much a city, I don't know if it still is, of writers and architects.
Absolutely.
Right? So what is Barcelona today? I mean, you live there. Is it an interesting city?
It's not. It's not. In a way, I think we are like a bit spoiled in Barcelona very much, because Barcelona, until like the last 10 years, it was like the center of Spain. Like it was like this most well-known city. In Barcelona, everyone went to Spain and we were like always forward think. Everything happened in Barcelona. And I think in the last years, like
everything happened in Madrid.
No, but other cities are also doing really well. So I think everything got a bit like Spain sort of became a bit more modern. But of course, Madrid is the place now. It's definitely the place. They have the money. The politics make things a bit more like...
You mean Madrid?
Madrid, they say it's the new Miami, for instance.
Would you like to move to Madrid?
No. I'm searching for the opposite thing. I mean, I don't really like cities. I mean, I enjoy being in my studio, reading, walking my dog. And then luckily, I feel really lucky because I have the chance for my work to then be 1 week in New York and then meet really interesting people. But I mean, for me, my daily life, I don't want distraction. I just want to read a book. I want to walk my dog, meet my friend, my family. So this is for me the life that I want. Actually, I want to move to Mallorca someday, because into a little village in Mallorca which is very little but very vibrant. There's a lot of artists and it's just like very authentic. It's something you meet local people, because Barcelona became very much like a brand and it's sort of like self-centered, but it lost. Madrid also has this authentic and real thing to it, and it's much more fun. I mean, if I have to recommend you a city, I would say, I mean, depending on your personality, but I think Madrid is somewhere where you can get much more input. But Barcelona will always be Barcelona, and it has a very contestant way of thinking. The seed or the core is there, and I think it will get better. Because you see that there's something about the city, like it's a place of many artists, many writers, culturally. There's something very...
But you show your work in London and New York.
You know, I don't work in Spain.
Why? They don't like you?
I don't know. You should ask them.
There is a lot of art and galleries.
I think it's becoming a golden age in art in Spain.
They say many South American people like to come and live in Madrid. No?
Yes. But I think there's a really good galleries, really good. There's Marco, which is big on me. But I don't have a gallery in Spain. But, you know, this is something that sometimes it happens, no? You work.
And how did you encounter the Voena, the Robilant Voena?
I mean, I work in London, I work in Rome, I work in Milan. So for me, in a way, I cannot complain. I'm really happy, but it's not like I don't want to work in Spain. I love to work in Spain someday. So I'm happy to travel.
And how do you find the world of art nowadays?
Well, I think it's a very vast world, and it has like, I don't think you can like somehow compress it into one definition. So I think everything's multiplied in every field. So I think it's more democratic. I think it's great that the market has grown. So actually you can make a living as an artist, I think it's in an easier way. And especially to get a window to the world. Like, I think the relationship, like, for instance, like the role of the gallery related to the art, it has changed a lot.
In what sense?
I think it's possible to make a living, whatever that means, as an artist without being represented by a gallery today. And I know many examples, but I think the gallery plays a very important role in order to reach certain levels and certain kind of collectors and recognition. And it's like, of course, definitely.
Where would you?
And I think Robin, in that case, it's not because I'm here, but I mean, what I'm really happy about them is because they have this long history and they have this long tradition. And I'm through this journey with them, I'm learning. I get to learn a lot. But I have this experiences with other galleries, which was, I mean, I'm paying you like 50% of what I sell, but what are you really doing for me? I sold more myself through my studio than from the gallery. You know? So I think that galleries, at the end, like only the good galleries are going to last at the end. And the galleries that are really giving like an extra...
And auction houses?
That's a hard thing, no? I mean, I'm not an expert, but I think it's a tricky field for artists to get in.
Do you think your work about is more for a house, is more for a museum?
Everywhere.
Where would you like to see your work?
Of course, I'd love to see my work in museums, definitely. Yes, of course. I'm quite, I think, big, and I'd love to work, as I work in these big scale sculptures. I mean, I think I'd love to make like big scale installations.
But your sculptures can stay outside?
Not so far. Not the textile ones.
And really. Textile is going to shrink, is going to get old.
Of course. Yeah, it's not an outdoor material. It's not. I'm not close to a unique material. I mean, maybe one day I will cast a piece of that made out of fabric in bronze. You know, I could actually make a bronze with the stitches.
And who are the artists that you admire? Why did you want to be an artist?
I mean, this is a question like everything that for me, like taste changes constantly. Like in every period of my life, I sort of like look up different people and artists because I'm in a different level of maturity or whatever. So it really depends. I mean, but I think material has a lot to do. So many artists who have worked with textiles and sculpture have always been like my big.
For example?
Like Luis Bourgeois, or of course, Cosima Bonin, Ernesto Neto, Joseph Beuys, like the felt sculptures. Yeah, to name like the super well-known and like superstars. Yeah, I mean, I get really emotional because for me, this material has something that when I meet someone that also has this fascination, there's like an instant connection.
Philaix, for instance, we interviewed that doing with wool, everything with wool, but you never work with wool or the...
I work with felt, it's also wool. But,
that's what you use, boys, no?
Yeah, exactly. So my first sculptures were made out of felt.
And it was Germany, as you said, Germany, then Vienna, you are very much into that side of the world? Or?
I used to be because as a teenager, I was fascinated by Sweden, Germany, because for me it was exotic. You know, it was like coming from Spain. It was for me like the idea of exotism was that, like the rational, like Northern European structure way of thinking. But after I tried, I realized it's not my thing, you know. I feel very connected to Germany. It is my second home. I mean, I have a lot of friends and I love it. And I love going there, and especially like the art and the culture and the literature and the philosophy. But it's not a place. I mean, I'm going to stay around the Mediterranean. It's really my thing.
The Mediterranean.
Yes.
You're fascinated by the Mediterranean.
Yes. Who isn't? I mean, I obviously are throughout my work, but even like historically, linen is very connected to the ancient civilizations of the Mediterranean. So, I mean, it was used by the ancient Greeks, by the Egyptians,
The Phoenicians.
So it's actually dated. They found prehistoric from the Neolithic. They found rests of linen. And so everything comes to a place, like things you do very instinctively, but then things in life, when you watch from perspective, things make sense and you see that. Do you know what I mean?
But you are mainly interested by the very ancient world. I mean, you're not interested by sculptures by Rodin or by Giacometti or by
I am
contemporary or Gomlin.
I am. I love the Soviet sculpture, for instance. I'm obsessed by Soviet sculpture, for instance. I love Rodin. I'm fascinated by many, many periods. I mean, for me, this is like also, I love like Middle Age, like religious wooden sculpture now. I'm really fascinated by it. So I try not to flow and influence. Even like some of the sculptures you can see are moving slowly more into the like abstraction as this
Why
one.
they have no nose, no eyes, nothing?
This is more, here I'm moving more to a like subjective kind of interpretation of a way of somehow talking about this idea of ruin, but from a more sort of like poetic or more personal way. And it's not so evident that I'm doing the broken face. So for me, it's sort of interesting to...
And you like the hair very much, no?
Yes. I enjoy doing the hair. So this is Mnemosyne. So this is the goddess of memory, you know, and this is one of the original, like the first generation.
She's not like that. This is an interpretation.
It is an interpretation. I mean, I never saw her, but...
So you invent.
I'm starting to do that.
But are you good at drawing?
I'm okay. I mean...
You're drawing them before?
Drawing for me is a medium. It's not like a final thing, you know. It's like I use it as a tool to translate ideas.
To take notes.
Yes.
With drawing.
Yes. But okay,
besides this exhibition in New York, which are your next projects?
Today, it's funny somewhat. I'm opening in Mi Art in Milan and also with Robilant and Voena and also with Spazio Nuovo from Rome in Mia Photo Fair. I'm showing some photography with them. Which
I do photography?
Well, this is an exhibition I did in Rome in November, and I was like picturing, like in my studio, I made like, it's called like column study. So I display different compositions of the sculptures in my studio with daguerreotype, with an actual daguerreotype. And it's actually like 8 times 12 centimeters, like still photographies. And what I was interested there is that I was using like a 19th century technique, which was the one used back then by the archaeologists or by the museums in the archive. So it sort of had this sort of idea of using the whole material in order to connect with the concept I'm interested on, no? Because I'm really interested in the 19th century, like the beginning of modernity, and sort of like how archaeology was created and was sort of like given a value, but also how this medium or this period of the past were interpreted from this perspective, giving a specific narrative.
You're not yet into Egyptology.
I am. I've took a course lately, like a short course. But of course, but I haven't done anything about it because for me, in a way, I have to say that I think like Greco-Roman art somehow is not appropriating anything from. I feel like
you should go to the archaeological museum in Naples.
I know. I haven't
to
been
see
yet.
Pompeii and all that.
I know that this is my next trip. Yeah, I mean, I've been almost everywhere, but this is definitely like the place I have to go. Yeah. I mean, Italy for me is everything. Italy is everything. I've been in many, many places, but the Pompeii is definitely like one of the places that I have to go and not Naples and see the Hercules, no, and see like
Fermese.
Yeah.
So next trip, next exhibition, Naples and Pompeii.
No, actually, I'm showing in Bonifacio, Corsica, in a really, really interesting. It's a biennial. I'm showing there an installation, and it's all like ruins, broken pieces and columns, and in a really amazing setup, which is like an old military building in front of the sea. Like
it belonged to the Legion,
yes,
the Légion étrangère.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place, and then actually it's a second edition. It's a delocated. It's not in the main route of art, but that's part also of the idea. And they have a really interesting lineup of artists, and it's all talking about the idea also of the ruin, of the fall of empires. And I'm really happy because I really relate to, and it's a biennial starting on the 10th of May, which I will go there. I'm so much looking forward until November the 2nd this year. And then I have all other stuff with a museum in Italy, which is Renaissance Museum, which is one of my favorites. I cannot say the place yet, but it's a Roman sculpture museum in Italy.
In Rome?
I don't know what, yeah. Everything seems it's going to happen, 99%, but we didn't sign yet.
So thank you very much for this interview, and good luck for your shows.
Alain Elkann interviews.